Have you ever wanted to create stylized flowers using Maya? This video tutorial is exactly what you're looking for. Hi creators, welcome back to Academic Phoenix Plus. My name is Monica and I am your guide through your stylized journey in Maya. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create the stylized flowers in 3D using Maya. If you're new to this channel, I post tutorials on a weekly basis. Software includes Maya, ZBrush, Substance Painter, and so much more. So if that is your sort of thing, please consider subscribing. So bring out that creativity, open up that software, and let's go ahead and get started in creating this stylized flowers and vase using Maya. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is create a project. So anytime you're about to create anything new, which I am, the stylized flowers, we're gonna go to File, Project Window, and create a new project. Let's click on New, and then over here I'm gonna call it Stylized Flowers. I'm gonna click on this little guy right here. I have a folder called 3D Projects, which I'm going to select, and then Accept. First I'm gonna need is a vase. So I'm going to go into my side view here and I'm going to go to Curve Tools and go to EP Curve Tool. If I just want to create a really basic, you can see that it's a little linear. So let's go back to Create Curves, EP Curve Tools, and go to the options, and I'm going to reset my tools so it turns into cubic. And now I can go ahead and create a very simple shaped vase. Now you'll notice that I am working on the origin right here because my pivot point is going to end up right there. So I'm going to hit enter. And if I press W, you can see that the pivot point is exactly where I want it to be, which is at the center of the object. Now it's not a big deal. If you moved it over here, you can always click on the letter D and place it at the edge of your silhouette. Now I can go to right click, control vertices, and make my changes. So for example, if I want to go ahead and maybe bring this down a little bit and tweak it so that it's a little bit more rounded, things like that. I can already tell it's going to be a little in the wiggly side. You can always just hit delete on your keyboard if you want less pieces. All right, let's see what that looks like. So again, I'm going to go to object mode. It's all about where the pivot point is located. So this point here and this point here should basically be aligned. So if you want to scale them, select this one, then select this one, and then grab this yellow one and bring it towards the center, it will flatten them out. So they're in the same plane. And then I can go to surfaces and hit revolve, or you guys can go ahead and go to surfaces and hit revolve here too in the tab. So they both do the same thing. And you'll notice that it is a different color. So I can select this object and I can go to surfaces because this is a NURB surface, and then say reverse direction, and now it's nice and gray. And you can see that's basically the shape of my outline and it's being revolved. So now I can go around and start tweaking it. Like maybe I want this to be smaller, things like that. And what's fun is that it's live. Once I'm happy with this shape, I can just go and select this object, and now we're going to go to modify, convert, NURBS to polygon options, and then choose control points. Now if I reset my settings, the default is triangles and standard fit. Just click on control points, tessellate, and you're going to be like, that doesn't look anything like this. It looks really quadratic. If you press the number 3, which is smooth preview, it's going to work. Now that I have that, you can either hide them, Control H, or you can delete them because you don't need them anymore. And now I'm going to center the pivot, delete the history, freeze the transformations, and then move this up. All right, so there's my very simple vase. And if you want to, label it Vase. Vase Geo. Now I'm going to go ahead and assign a new material. So right click, assign new material, and I'm going to go to my Arnold AI standard surface. And in my head, I have this to be a little bit in the yellow for whatever reason. And I'm going to decrease the roughness a little bit. I'm going to create a circle for the ground. Whoop. And then I'm going to go to Arnold Lights, Physical Skies, and it looks like this. I'm going to go ahead and save. And the nice thing about creating your project is that it will save it, and it saves it in scenes. And that's really great because that's exactly where I want to find my Maya files. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Stylized Flowers version 1. So if we take a look at our 3D project, Stylized Flowers folder, you can see that if I go to scenes, there it is. And that's exactly what I want. And now I'm ready to start putting my reference images into source images. All right, so I have my flowers here, and you can see that it is an image of flowers. So now I have to make them into an alpha so I can bring them in. So we're going to jump into Photoshop. Here we are in Photoshop, and what I need is to remove the outside area but keep the inside. Now, the way this has been drawn, I think it should be relatively easy. Let's go ahead and grab the magic wand, and we're going to click out here, which will select all of this blank space. And now we need to reverse the selection. So we're going to go to select, inverse, or you can do a shift control I. And then I can do a control J, which will create a new layer. And now I have the outlines. Now let's go ahead and create a black outline or a black background. So shift backspace, which will give you the foreground color. Or if you guys want to go the long way, you can go to edit fill. You want to choose the foreground, which is black for me, and then click OK and see if the outlines are high quality. So you can see that we are getting a little bit of that dark edging in here, and that's because of the anti-alias. So there's a couple of ways we can try to remove this anti-alias. We can double click on this and create a stroke, which I want it to be about 1 pixel. And I also want it to be the inside, and then we can make it black. And that should get rid of most of the anti-alias. Another option we can do is increase the contrast. So we can go ahead and bring in the levels. So down here at the bottom in the adjustment layers, we can grab a level, and then we can see if there's a way that we can take these grays and drag them to the right to make it more black. So now we have a higher contrast. Next, what we're going to do is I'm going to select this object. So I'm going to do a control click on the thumbnail, which is going to select my flowers. And then I'm going to go to my channels, which is right here. So we got layers and we got channels, and we're going to create a new alpha mask, and that's going to give us a black and white image. Let me delete my background. If you want to, you can keep this black like so. And then we're going to save as. So file, save as. I'm going to save as a copy, and I'm going to choose a PNG. And this is going to be my flowers base color. Now, another fun thing I could do is go to my effects, double click on it, and choose what's called a color overlay. And I can choose a white color. And that will give me kind of like an alpha as well. So with this, I can again do a file, save as. I'm going to go to save a copy. I'm going to change this to my PNG. And this one's going to be my flowers alpha. Jumping back into here, I'm going to create a plane. I'm going to assign a new material. So right click, assign new material, new material. I'm going to choose my Arnold AI standard surface. I'm going to label this as my flower shader. We're going to go to color, click on this, click on file, click on that little folder, and now we have our flower space color. I'm going to press the number 6, and there it is. But if I try to render it, what we're going to end up with is a solid color. So let me just rotate this so I can just kind of place it right now. So what we're going to do is scroll down to geometry. You can see that we have an opacity here. We're going to click on this. We're going to go to file. We're going to go to folder, and we're going to grab our alpha. Let's make sure our utility is raw. And we also want to make sure our alpha luminance is active. And then when we render, it turns into some flowers, transparent flowers. Isn't that beautiful? Just like that. Right, I'm going to click on the letter D to move the pivot point down, just make my life a little easier, and I can just go ahead and plug it in. Now, we do have a lot of mesh that we don't need. All of this we don't need, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And it's so flat, right? So when I look at this and I render it and I revolve it, you can see that it's really flat, and I'm not a big fan of that. So I'm going to go to vertices, click on vertex, and just kind of move these down a little bit to give it a little bit of depth. It's going to be subtle, nothing major, but at least it's going to be something. All right, so now when we render them, we're going to have a little bit of depth in there. I'm not too convinced with this one. Yeah, that one looks a little silly. Let me flatten it back out. If you want to add a space right there, we can always grab the multi-cut and just kind of add some triangles here. So that's going to look a little bit better. Same thing with this one. Use the multi-cut again. Press enter and grab that one and push it in. Right, so if it moves around, at least there's a little bit of depth. All right, so now I'm going to duplicate this, Control D, and rotate it. Bring it down, maybe scale it. And then we have something like that. Now it is a little shiny. If I can get the right angle, you guys can see how shiny it is. So I'm going to go in here and go to my roughness, and I probably want to go ahead and increase my roughness so there is no highlight. Let me see if I can try to match that color. And I'm also going to increase the roughness so that it matches a little bit. And now I'm going to show you the magic trick with paint effects. We need to make sure that our object is ready to be painted on. The first thing we need to do is UVs. So let's go to UV cylindrical map, and I'm just going to do a basic cylindrical map, and that should be enough to get everything working. Next, we're going to go to Windows Content Browser, which is going to pop up our content browser, and there's a variety of things that you can play with, and the one that I recommend is going into Paint Effects, and you're going to find all sorts of stuff in here, and the one that I specifically want is going to be pastels. Now there are pencils, there's also pens. I just think pastel gives me the better look, but you know, explore, that's what's fun about it. Now for the paint effects to work on this, we need to be able to make this paintable, because if I try right now to draw on it, it's just gonna draw behind it. It's in here somewhere to make paintable, but I forget where. So I go to the search bar over here to the bottom left, this magnifying glass, and I click on that, and then I just type in paintable. And you can see that it makes make paintable. So make sure your mesh is selected, click on make paintable, and that makes it paintable. So now I can grab the tool again. I can either use this one, which is the previous tool I used, or again, you could just double click on this mouse script, and now I can actually start drawing on it. Now every time I make what's called a stroke, like so, you'll notice in the outliner that I get another stroke. So every single line that I'm going to create is going to create a line. Now of course I can undo, and I can also select them, but that's basically how it works. So now it's just up to me how I want to go ahead and draw this, and I'm going to do a little bit of hatching, and you can see that it's pretty thick. Now you might want to go ahead and render, and you're going to see that it doesn't actually render very well. The reason why is because this is a paint effect. It's really old tool. It's from like Maya, I don't even know what, 7? That's when I started using it, by the way. So we actually have to convert this into mesh so that Arnold can read it. So it's pretty easy. We're going to select our strokes here. We're going to go to modify, convert paint effects to polygons, and you can see that it creates this group. Now I can hide these, not that it matters, it doesn't render, but if I render, you still can't see them. That's because it's got a funny little shader on it. And so therefore we have to assign the Arnold shader. So let's right click, assign a new material, or you can even do Lambert if you want to, but I'm using an Arnold renderer, so I might as well use an Arnold surface shader. So I'm going to make this into pretty dark. I'm going to increase my roughness. I'm going to call this my ink shader, just to make sure I know which one to choose from. And then when I render, I now have these strokes. Now, another thing you're going to notice is that when I take a look at this whole thing, the strokes here are really thick in comparison to these little graphics. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those and delete these and try again. So I'm going to double click on my tool. Again, if it's not there, you can always just double click here, which will turn it into the pen. Open up the tools, and we can work with the width. So right now the width is at 0.1 and 0.7. So I'm going to change this to 0.5 and then 0.2. And then I can start hatching. So I'm going to take a minute to just go ahead and do a very basic hatching. Nothing too phenomenal. And just going to go through and just kind of hatch away. All right, now you can see that I have a ton of hatches. I'm going to go ahead and select them all. I'm going to go to modify, convert, paint effects to polygons. I'm probably going to group these just because it's a lot. And then I'm going to assign that existing, and you're going to see that there are a ton of shaders, right? And that's the issue, is that every single stroke that I make is going to create a shader. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and select these, delete them, go to my hypershade. You can see my hypershade has a ton of material. So I'm going to go to edit, delete unused nodes. And that should clear most of them. Select a group and let me create a new one. Right click, assign new material, Arnold. AI center surface. Let's go ahead and make it nice and dark. And there we go. Now to clean up my hypershade, I can now go to edit, delete unused nodes. And then that should get rid of all the nodes I didn't use. So I've got my standard shader. This is going to be my stroke black shader. And we can take a look, and that's how you can create a painterly styled picture. Now we can also change the background color to make this look really nice. I'm going to create a plane, really large plane. I'm going to assign the same material as the vase, which I'm going to relabel. And I'm going to skip this in the back, flip it 90 degrees. Like an old school way of doing it. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. It's bigger still. And that's how you can create a stylized looking shader. Now what's missing is the nice little outlines around the edges. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit so that we can actually see a little bit of the, don't forget the strokes there, and just lift it up a little bit together so that I can see a little bit more of the bottom. Okay. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to select this mesh, and if you guys go down to rendering, we're going to go to tune, and there is an assign outline, and you can add a new tune outline. Now, similar to the paint effects, when we render this, you're going to see that nothing has changed. And the reason why, it's because it's the paint effects. And the exact same thing we did with the paint effects is that we're going to convert it. So let's go to modify, convert, paint effects to polygons. And now that I render, you're going to see that I now have an outline. So now it's, even when I press play, no matter where the camera is going, you can see that it's giving us a nice little edge. Now, if you guys want to manipulate this, you still can. If you select the PFX Tune 1 in the outline and open up your attributes with that Control A, you can make them thicker by 0.2. You can make them thinner by changing it to 0.5. You can actually play around with the offsetting if you want to. Line ending thinning. There's just a lot of little things you can tweak to make this look a little bit more stylized. And that's how you can fairly quickly create some really cute looking stylized flowers with a vase. Now, if you don't want to get those shadows, you can go to your light and you can see that you can turn off your shadows, which is going to make things pretty flat. But that might be the look that you're going for. If you don't want that highlight, you can always turn off specularity. And there you go. That's how you can create this type of lighting. And that's how we can create some really cute stylized flowers. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. If you did, please like and subscribe. That's your message to me, letting me know that you like this content and that you want to see more. Please share my videos. If you know of an artist out there that's trying to create something stylized, then please share my videos. That would be amazing. And also take a look at academicphoenixplus.com. There you will find free videos, ebooks, resources, and so much more. So take a look at academicphoenixplus.com. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Keep creating, and I will see you next time in the next video tutorial.